to the UK, Charles, and the question of food security.
Thanks, Mike, and good afternoon all. Yes, food security was something that we looked at last week, and I wanted to start with a clarification because I made a comparison between the UK and Russia in terms of the land it used for arable farming, but I didn't state explicitly that it was an arable comparison. So just a reminder that the slide on screen now shows 6.1 million hectares of what's called croppable area in the UK and 84.5 million in Russia, meaning that Russia uses nearly 6.5 times as much for the production of food via arable means. But obviously it wasn't intended as a direct like-for-like comparison, but the point of it was to illustrate that Russia, the butt of constant criticism, was in fact doing something markedly different from the UK. However, since that report, the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board have rerun their early bird survey, which seems to be associated with the terrible weather that's been experienced in the UK over the last few months, the extreme wet. But this is obviously combined with what I was talking about last week, which is the reduction in land given to the production of food. And the red arrow here shows that arable fallow has increased by 79%. So that's a 79% increase in the amount of land that's being left and is not producing food. Now, it's not clear whether or not that's been inspired particularly by the environmental land management announcements that Steve Barclay made back in January. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting and somewhat alarming correlation. I also spoke about solar farms and the land that's given over to them. And this government document, recently updated in February, talks about the incredible inconsistencies in the planning for solar farms, which states that there are no hard and fast rules about how suitable areas for renewable energy developments should be identified. So we have a situation in which farmers are being paid subsidy simultaneously to produce and not produce food. At the same time, the government's not even able to calculate how much land is used for solar farms and how much of different types of land are used. Now, this is pertinent for several reasons, but not least because of the sort of blanket coverage that the land management schemes give to land that can go into one of these schemes, not really giving much consideration to the type of land itself. But just on the scale of it, the government calculates that approximately 4 acres is needed for each megawatt of output. The government has an intent to produce 70 gigawatts of solar power by the year 2035, which would require just over 113,000 hectares. Now, the campaign for the protection of rural England, preservation of rural England, CPRE, put a statement out in February 2022, effectively criticising the government's actions on this. And they specifically make reference to the enormous space on the roofs of commercial buildings, saying that the location of choice for solar developments has become valuable farmland, ignoring the 250,000 hectares of south-facing commercial roof space. Now, very obviously they're rudimentary figures, but it's perfectly clear that if such an approach were taken, if the government insists on putting solar farms up in the first place, the problem could be dealt with almost immediately by using roof space rather than any farmland at all. What I would encourage you to do is to listen to Steve Goreham talking about this in an interview with Mike a few months ago, The Race to Zero with Steve Goreham, in which he talks about effectively the density by which energy is produced, going through all the various natures, and he makes it make a huge amount of sense. So I would encourage you to have a listen to that at this time where we're constantly being told that this is absolutely necessary. But to further highlight the contradictions and the way that land is used, I'm just going to show you written evidence by Solar Energy UK. And now what they talk about is the government's intent to reclassify the definition of best and most versatile BMV land to include grade 3B. Now, I don't need to go into specific detail exactly, but effectively what the government's saying is that they want to deter developers from putting solar panels onto land that is qualified as or classified as being the best for food production. And we're in this absurd situation now where there's effectively competition for sort of net zero methods. So on the one hand, you've got farmers wanting to take up government schemes for reed beds and flower meadows and the like. And then on the other side, the solar energy industry wanting to do the same thing and insist that they're going to reach the net zero target, if we can just put that slide back on screen, and deliver tangential benefits such as reduced energy bills and opportunities to increase biodiversity. Of course, they don't exactly explain how that's going to be possible, but just to finish off, we'll look at the way in which all of this affects the taxpayer. Yesterday, the government announced that the British Industry Supercharger will give a huge boost to UK businesses, and effectively this is subsidising the cost of electricity for certain industries. Now, the critical bit of text is highlighted here because it says that it will fully exempt eligible firms from certain costs linked to renewable energy policies. So the taxpayer is being asked to foot the bill, not just for all the farming subsidies to both produce and not produce food, but also for nature recovery, also for all of the renewable energy technologies that are being introduced. And we see here that since 2013, there's been more than £2.5 billion put into just this particular aspect of the production of renewable energy. So this is going to be something that we'll continue to follow up with special regard to the use of land.